let me start by saying, let's be clear. We're all here because Milwaukee Public School children deserve the best in terms of education opportunities. To this end, Congresswoman Gwen Moore is the first person who said we ought to have all hands on deck. Myself and Representative Grigsby and others feel that if the mayor of Milwaukee want to participate in providing the children of Milwaukee with excellence in education, the mayor, for the first time, should have a role, but not control. Now, let me dispel something real quick. Excuse me. The mayor said there are a number of us who have worked together for over 26 years, and that's true. I've known the mayor for at least 26 years. And I know that he cares about the children. We all care about the future of MPS. And ladies and gentlemen, none of us, not one of us, want the status quo. If I keep hearing that same mantra that if you don't go with the takeover, you want the status quo, all that does is it insults my intelligence, it insults every legislator's intelligence, and it really disrespects the intelligence of the people behind me. But I have a confession. My confession is this: I'm a closet education policy geek. I've been seriously studying MPS since 1971 when I first got married, because knowing I was going to have children, I wanted to look at the school system. And I have studied the superintendents of MPS since 1983 when I first got elected. And so I have seen them come and go. I have seen the slickest superintendents you ever want to see. I've seen some of the ones who you wouldn't even put in a paper bag. And they have represented our children and failed our children. I have also been involved in national education trends and testing trends since the mid-1990s, when then President Clinton took over and started the National Education Goals Panel. And that was some 21 people from across the country to talk about national trends and testing. And there were 4 legislators. I was one of the 4 legislators. Also, please forgive my voice, also 7 years ago, I seriously looked at the possibility of Milwaukee having a mayoral takeover because of what had happened in Boston and what had happened in Chicago. And so what I did was I asked about a half a dozen legislators from the Boston area and a half a dozen legislators from the Chicago area if this is something that Milwaukee should do. I got absolutely no one legislator from Chicago or from Boston to give me any encouragement, and so I dropped it. Representative Grigsby and I have specific objectives for reform. We want reform that is effective and helps and doesn't hurt the students. We want reform that helps us to qualify for whatever money we can get for Race to the Top. And we want reform that doesn't deny democracy and the people's right to vote. That is so important. So how did we get here? Well, I was first approached with doing this takeover based on the Race to the Top money that Wisconsin could receive. And what I was told was that we would get $400 million in Wisconsin. And then the number changed. It went to $300 million. Then it went to $200 million. Then it went to a possibility of $80 to $100 million. And Milwaukee would get approximately some of that, perhaps 30, perhaps 20, perhaps as little as $5 million. Okay? When I was told about the takeover, I asked if the administration had gotten broad public support, and they said no. And I warned them at that time that it was a mistake not to get broad public support early on. So you asked the question, what has been the public reaction? Well, there's been several venues. I went to a venue at Park Lawn Church, Riverside High School, and the Community Brainstorming Conference at St. Matthew's Church. At each venue, there were over 100 people. And we also, myself and Representative Grigsby, had at least 3 appearances on talk radio. And I represented some 6 hours talking about takeover plans and our plan on radio, and a vast majority of the people, I have written here that 90% of the people were against it. It was closer to 98% of the people were against takeover. The main concern was they felt it was big government making a power grab and ignoring people's right to vote. So before you have our plan, you have the TEACH plan. The TEACH plan's takeover identified the basic problem of the lack of democratic participation with an elected board. But to have an elected board with no real power is a cruel joke on the people and the parents and the children of the city of Milwaukee. In fact, most of the people I've talked to call it bait and switch. It looks like you have representation, but they do absolutely nothing. Now, you folks aren't from Milwaukee, so let me tell you about Milwaukee. In Milwaukee, if we're going to pay you to represent us, we want you to represent us. And so having a school board that gets paid to do nothing is against every Milwaukee principle that there is. Now, as stated, our bill would standardize math and reading curriculum, have a meaningful multicultural training for staff and administrators. It would increase accountability with more financial reporting to the Department of Public Instruction, the Joint Committee on Finance, the City Council, and the mayor. Some of the major new powers of the mayor include excuse me, required participation in the selection of the superintendent, required participation in a joint city school district committee to identify ways to consolidate services, and most drastically, a line item veto over the school district budget. And a line item veto is one of the most powerful things that you can give an executive government person. So to say that this bill does not provide any radical new direction for MPS with city involvement is simply wrong. And we give the mayor unprecedented power through partnership, participation, and of course, those vetoes. Now, it's also been said, who supports this? In the Senate, you have heard in the past that we have 5 senators from Milwaukee, and supposedly 4 of the 5 senators from Milwaukee support a takeover plan. Well, let me tell you the truth. The truth is very simple, that the parents and the children of Milwaukee Public Schools are represented primarily by 2 state senators in the state of Wisconsin. That is Senator Taylor, and that is myself. And in Senator Taylor's district, she has 3 state representatives. 2 of the 3 state representatives are against the takeover, and they are for our plan. And in my district, all 3 of my state representatives are against the takeover and for our plan. So in terms of who is for and who is against, the people who have direct responsibility for Milwaukee Public Schools are against a mayoral takeover and for our plan. Now, we set out to solve a problem. We didn't set out to play politics, okay? If we set out to play politics, we would have had a lot more of a radical, extreme plan so that you would have the takeover over here and you would have us over here. We set out to solve a problem, so we went right to the problem. And so we didn't have a middle ground because we went directly to the middle ground. And yet the opponents rejected our position, okay? We and everyone else that I know view our plan as a compromise, except the opponents. In fact, some of our supporters say we've compromised too much. Okay, and so sometimes we have to fight the opponents, and sometimes we have to fight our friends as well. Committee, how we proceed from this point will decide the fate of several generations of Milwaukee Public School children.